Well, good morning, everybody. Come in and grab a seat. Come in and grab a seat. If you are new or visiting, my name is Matt. I get the joy of being the priest in this beautiful community. And we are in the middle of a series looking at Mark. And our whole goal, as I said before, is that we would have an annotated copy of Mark so that you can know what Jesus thinks about certain things. And today we're going to dive into the feeding of the 5,000. That's where we are in our series. And what I want to say is that we've got kids making some bread over here. We love our kids in our church, and they will make a bit of a noise, and that's beautiful, isn't it? And so we love kids. And so please, while we are in this awkward building, excuse the noise and the cold for a moment. And so, yeah, we're going to dive in. Can we welcome Mia, everybody? Where's Mia gone? Mia, can we welcome Mia, everybody? Mia's going to read to us. We are on page 35, and we're going to dive in. Mia, over to you. Come in the middle.
The apostles gathered around Jesus. They told him all that they had done and taught. But many people were coming and going, so they did not even have a chance to eat. Then Jesus said to his apostles, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place. You need to get some rest." So they went by themselves in a boat to a quiet place. But many people who saw them leaving recognized them. They ran from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus came ashore, he saw the large crowd. He felt deep concern for them. They were like sheep without a shepherd, so he began teaching them many things. By that time it was late in the day. His disciples came to him. "There's nothing here," they said. "It's already very late. Send the people away. They then can go to the nearby countryside and villages to buy something to eat." But Jesus answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's pay. Should we go and spend that much on bread? Are we supposed to feed them?" "How many loaves do you have?" Jesus asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 loaves and 2 fish. Then Jesus instructed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 100s and 50s. Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. He looked up to heaven and gave thanks. He broke the loaves into pieces. Then he gave them to the disciples to pass around to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. All of them ate and were satisfied. The disciples picked up 12 baskets of the broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000.
Can we thank Mia, everybody? Thank you so much. Okay, this classic text, the feeding of the 5,000. I want to dive in fairly early on in this little story. The apostles gathered, the first line, the apostles gathered around Jesus. They told him what they had done and taught, but many people were coming and going and they didn't have a chance to eat. I just want to stop here because I think we skip over this bit. This is a critical part of the narrative that we skip over because we want to get to the big miracle story. Jesus is allowing them to unburden themselves in his presence, to recoup, to find their rest, to find their fulfillment, to find their identity, and to be restored in Jesus' presence. This is the primary place that we find our identity. Yet, like many, we want to run ahead. We want to get to the miracle. But yet this is critical to the narrative, critical to the story. And most scholars don't use these words. But what they say is essentially what Jesus and the disciples are having is a staycation. They're having time around the lake. Yeah, they are fishermen. They grow up around water. They're having a beach day. They're having a lake day. Yeah, they're enjoying time out in the water, soaking up the sun, maybe cracking open a bottle of vintage vino and enjoying themselves on the lake. This is what they want. They want time with Jesus, relaxing on the beach. Yet it's in this moment that the crowd starts pushing in. And this is the moment that Jesus does what the disciples don't expect him to do. And it's an important line that we skip over. Verse 30, they didn't have a chance to eat. They didn't have a chance to eat. What was the last thing in the story for those who've been joining us we hear about Jesus in this moment. The last story, the page before, is that his cousin John the Baptist gets killed by Herod, publicly executed. This is the moment where Jesus is ministering. He's come to get some time away on the lake with his friends, to invest in the 12. And the crowd starts pushing in. He's not well rested. He's not feeling 100%. He's mourning. He's carrying emotional baggage. Yet he sees a greater opportunity than self-fulfilling to fulfill the multitude, to feed them, to love them, to bring his best to them. And it's kind of easy to dive into the big picture of the miracle, but we need to recognize that Jesus is acting in a moment of severe grief, unimaginable pain. And there we see the dialogue unfold. Verse 36. The disciples say to Jesus, "Send the people away. Send the people away. They can go to the nearby countryside and villages to buy something to eat." In other words, isn't Dart's Farm open? Isn't Greendale down the road? Can't they go to Lidl or Aldi? Can't they give them some money, Jesus, and send them away? And Jesus says, whoa, hang on a minute. You give them something to eat. I just pause for a moment here. Ponder this moment. Send them away. No. You give them something to eat. And parents in the room, Harry and Amy, this one's for you. This is like the time where your kid comes down the stairs. You know when you put them to bed? And they come down the stairs, not just the first time or the second time or the 8th time or the 10th time or the 11th time, but the 18th time. And you're like, can you go to bed? They are exhausted. They are exasperated. This is a moment where they're like, can somebody else deal with these people, please? And they look at Jesus and they're like, just send them away. Just send them away. Now, this is a word for someone in the house. Jesus is able to use you at your most exhausted time, at the moment where you're quickest to give up, at the moment where you feel more tired than you ever have been before. Jesus is able to use you in this moment to bring a testimony that will last not just hours or days, but years and generations. I get that you're tired. I get that life has not been easy. But in this moment, please push in. Keep praying. Keep allowing the Spirit to fall upon you. Keep saying, God, have your way in this place. Ask the question, Lord, what do you want to do here? We were in Bournemouth a couple of years ago. We left London 12 years ago, Laura and I, when I was about to get ordained. And we started this church in Bournemouth. And it was really beautiful. It was one of the most exciting places that we've been, second to Unlimited, obviously. And it was incredible. What we saw happen was ministries rapidly grow. We ran the biggest recovery course in the country. Our youth group was full of kids that weren't being fed at home. We saw people come in off the streets and get to know who Jesus is. Every week we would pray, Holy Spirit, come, and the Spirit would break out in this miraculous ways. And one of the things that we saw as the church started growing in the miraculous was that the worship leaders started singing these songs prophetically over the congregation. And these songs would just ring out. And we got to a point where we said, we've got to record. We've got to record these songs. These songs mean something. They are beautiful and wonderful. And we booked this recording studio. We fundraised. And the budget for that was probably bigger than our church budget today. And it was amazing. We got all these people down the road in Brighton. And the worship leader at the time was a guy called Jamie, still one of our closest friends. I shouldn't name him, but I have. And so Jamie booked and fundraised for this studio. And we booked it. The day came as this big studio where all the big Christian artists had booked their albums and recorded them. And en route to this studio, we got a call from Jamie saying, I've broken down. I've broken down. So like someone had AA, they quickly called them out and they got there as quick as possible. And the AA guy said to him, I've got good news and bad news for you. He said, the good news is that there's nothing wrong with your car. The bad news is that your team are never going to let you live this down. You have run out of petrol. And we ripped into him forevermore. And actually, it wasn't the first time it happened, but the second time it happened. And so we would continually rip into him. But you know that feeling where you are coasting with the red light on, praying, Lord, get me there, Lord, get me there, Lord, get me there, both emotionally and physically. This is where the disciples are at. They are running on empty, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and it is in that place that God works this incredible miracle. And so I'm going to break out here. And we're going to work out what we do now. And so we're going to break out here. And unlimited, we break out in the middle of our talk. Dialogue matters more than monologue in church. And we want to have a conversation about this. And so I want to ask this question in 2s and 3s where you are at. What resources, gifts, and opportunities do we have in our lives that sometimes we underestimate or overlook? And are there moments that God can still powerfully use them in your life today? Second question, if you're not a person of faith, after having a conversation with God, what areas of your life would you want God to start working in today? Is that okay? Can we break into groups, 2, 3s, 4s? We've got a couple of minutes on the clock, and then we're going to come back in just, I think, 2 or 3, maybe 4 minutes. Let's have a conversation, and then we're going to come back in just a moment. Come on in. Can we just thank Leslie and Jade with the kids? Can we thank these guys? Come on, can we thank these guys? I'm sorry, it is extra noisy in the house today. We love having kids, and we have lost some of our key volunteers with DBSs and that kind of stuff, and so I apologise now. I'm also sorry about the heaters as well. Right, we've lost our boiler and some of our DBS people, and so God is still good. God is still good. I think this is interesting, this conversation, because where God does the most miraculous things. Like 5 years ago, what we saw nationally and locally was the church on its knees. Coming out of lockdown, we saw the church in a really rough place. Like, what are we seeing now? Like, week after week, we are seeing a church which is beautifully, wonderfully growing, not because people are jumping churches, but because people are coming into this space and coming to faith. People are coming into this space and experiencing who Jesus is. Why? Because that is the mission of God. The Missio Dei, the moment of God being at work. And it's often when we are at the brink of giving up where God works most apparently and beautifully. And therefore, when we are tired and hungry and hangry and frustrated, and we feel like nothing is ever going to change, and no one is ever going to listen, and it's going to be the same nightmare on repeat day after day, I implore you to hear these words. How many loaves do you have? How many loaves do you have? Because the story that I know which is true about God is it's not what you do have and what you are thinking might happen and what you're planning might happen. God is not in the business of looking and saying, I know you planned for this, but I'm going to do that. What I know is important about God is what you have in your hand right now. God will use what you have in your pocket, in your hand, in your life, in your home, in your head to be the yeast for the miracle that he wants in this beautiful city and county. Now, why is it that when we've screwed up most, the person that we've been praying for DMs us and says, tell me about God? Now, why is it that when we've run out of answers and the friends keep coming knocking and we're saying, Lord, I can't answer any more questions, that suddenly the Holy Spirit speaks and it brings life to who we are? I mean, why is it that at the times when we spend all our energy and that person, that person in your life who rings and you're like, Lord, not that person. And you answer the phone and they give you the most life-giving moment where you see his provision and his care. Why is it that he works in those moments? Why is it that when you are knackered and done. And you say, God, I give you one more church service, one more day, that when you show up, something hits hard and the goodness of God falls in your life. It's because so often God chooses to work not from the greatest strengths in your life, although he will use those and use them for his glory, your talents and your times, but he wants you to know that what you have in your pocket now is the most important thing. What you have in your pocket now, he'll use to minister to people around you. What you have now is where he'll start the miracle. Not what you have in 6 months' time. Not when the fundraising comes in. Not when you get the job or the raise. Not when you've had 6 months of lessons. Not when you've had 6 months of mentoring. Not when you've been on another program. No, God will use what you have in your pocket today for the miracle now. He cares about today. He is the God of the miraculous that will not be stopped by our inferior thinking and imposter syndrome. You know, what's the phrase that we say quite a lot? A bad builder blames their tools. Yeah, a bad builder blames their tools. What does a master builder do? A master builder takes what they have and makes something beautiful and wonderful out of it. Who is the master builder? Jesus. What's his best tool to reach the people in your life that you love and you've been praying for? It is you. And therefore we have to stop telling ourselves, I'm waiting on better tools, and trust that the master builder is able to create miracle after miracle out of the small prayers, times, situations, and conversations in your life today. How many loaves do you have? How many loaves do you have? How many loaves do you have? It's not the same question as how many loaves can you produce? How many can you buy? How resourceful can you be? How much can you bake up tomorrow, next year, next month? No. How many loaves do you have is a question that God is asking us now and today. What is in your pocket that God will use right now for his glory? Something that I adore about our church is its heart. Its missional heart. Yeah, I think what we're seeing is people enter into the church, learning to experience who Jesus is, finding their life in and through him, having an encounter which changes everything, and not selfishly staying in the center, but departing into the world, proclaiming, this is the God who I've met. This is who Jesus is. This is where we find our life. A journey into the wild, proclaiming God is good, he loves me, he is for me, and he is the God who works miracle after miracle. And this is what he is doing. Verse 37 to 42. It's the last half of the page from here downwards. But Jesus answered, you give him something to eat. You give him something to eat. That would take more than a half a year's pay, they said. Should we go spend that much money on bread? Are we supposed to feed them? How many loaves do you have? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked, go and see. When they found out, they said 5 loaves, 2 fish. Then Jesus instructed them all to sit down in groups on the grass. So they sat down in groups of 150. Jesus took 5 loaves, 2 fish. He looked up to heaven. He gave thanks. He broke the loaves into pieces. He gave them to the disciples to pass around to the people. He also divided up the 2 fish amongst them. All of them ate and were satisfied. Disciples packed up 12 baskets of broken pieces of bread and fish. And the number of men or families, who had eaten was 5,000. 5,000. One of the commentators that we're trekking with over this series, R. Alan Cole, said this: the sequence here is interesting. Once the disciples have seen the need of the crowd, then Jesus lays upon them the task of meeting that need. Half angered, half humiliated, they confess their own utter inadequacy to do so, and Jesus reminds them that he can meet the needs of any emergency. Interesting. After moaning and complaining and rolling their eyes, they clearly have faith that Jesus will do what he will do. How do we know this? Because they split the crowd and then the miracle happens. I wonder whether we can have faith like that. If Jesus says, hey, I'm going to work here, I'm going to do this, I'm moving in this sphere, can we have faith to split the crowds and then see what he will do? And then right there, the last bit, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of pieces of bread and fish. 12 baskets of broken pieces of bread and fish. 12. Number of families had eaten was 5,000. When God provides, he provides. Now, can I just nerd out on this numbers for a sec? Is that all right? Can I just dive into the detail here? I know you're cold and the heaters are like working halfway, but can I just nerd out on the symbolism of the 5 loaves? Because it's fascinating. The bread represents manna from heaven. Remember that story about when the people of God walked out of Egypt? They were walking around the desert having no food. And God said, every day I will provide for you. And every day they woke up and there was manna, there was bread on the ground. Heavenly bread that fed them. Symbol of this, that when we are hungry and starving, God will feed us. When we cry out, Leaves, you all right? When we cry out, he will provide. The number 5 is a throwback to the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers. Not in that order. Welcome to a life with ADHD, everybody. What do we learn about in the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible? We learn about the law of Moses, the original covenantal relationship that God had with his people. What does Jesus say? Jesus says, I bring a new covenant. The symbolism here of God at work. The fact that they started with 5 loaves and finished with 5,000. Most scholars will say this is a reminder of the work of Elisha and Elijah. Think about the continual filling, the continued pouring of the oil. He tells the disciples to recline. This is fascinating. Just recline. Because in the Roman world, the time that you would recline is at a banquet. Just ponder this a moment. This little boy brings a lunchbox and Jesus says, get everyone to recline. And they're like, Jesus, you are nuts. And in the Jewish world, they would recline for one meal, and that was the Passover. Again, a symbol of what Jesus would do. And then finally, taking the 5 loaves. What does this remind us of? It's a foretaste of what Jesus would do at the Last Supper, where he takes bread, rips it apart and says, this is my body, broken and given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. It's fascinating. Yeah, I want to kind of think about what the disciples would have thought in this moment. Like you fast forward the clock to the Lord's Prayer. Give us today our daily bread. You think about old Uncle John writing 1 John and 2 John at the end of his life, remembering the work of Jesus. Can you imagine just a moment, can you imagine just a moment how emotional that would be for him? Like as he says, Jesus taught us to pray, give us today our daily bread. And this reminded us of this time where there was 5,000 people in this little kid's lunchbox and God provided. Jesus broke the bread and we had 5 baskets full for 5,000 people. Imagine the emotion that it would throw back. It's fascinating. Interesting. And it starts with this phrase. By that time, it was late in the day. By that time, it was late in the day. Emily Dickinson, a poet from the last century, said this. It was too late for man, but early yet for God. It was too late for man, yet early yet for God. It would do us well to remember this phrase. It was late for man, but early yet for God. Joel Marcus, one of the guys we've tracked in with again, he makes the point that the material deficiency in these guys' lives led to a spiritual deficiency. Thanks, Chris. It's gone. And that they have a greater spiritual dependency on Jesus would ask a different set of questions. Not where can we buy this food? Not what can be done? But he'd ask a different set of questions. Lord, what are you going to do? How are you going to work? How are you going to meet the needs of the people? And finally, this little boy offers up a packed lunch. Just, can you tell me honestly that in 5,000 people, the only person who had food that day was a little boy and a packed lunch? You know why there was only one little packed lunch offered? It was because food was scarce. People didn't have much. People wouldn't know where the next meal was coming from. And therefore, the banquet that follows is significant, as people never would have seen a meal like this before, let alone having food to spare. And so the conclusion is this: Jesus turning a little meal deal into a banquet is significant for the following reasons. John Marcus says, our story presents Jesus as the realization of their hopes. As the realization of their hopes. He is expected as the revealer and the shepherd of the people who will lead them to a final victory. This banquet is a reminder again of who Jesus really is, how he loves us. The question, how many loaves do you have, is as fitting for them as it is for us. We need to be reminded again that God is in the business of miracles. In places and times when we feel low and distracted and worn out and knackered, when we want the miracle more than ever. You know, we have enough in this city. We have enough retail therapy going on. We have enough burger joints. We have enough beautiful coffee shops. They are beautiful. We have enough gyms. We have enough nightclubs and bars. But we do not have enough miracle centers that proclaim Jesus. Where people can come and they can find their life. Where they can come and they can see who Jesus really is. Where they can come and they can find a group of people saying, how many loaves do you have? Because I think Jesus is in the business of healing and restoring and renewing and working miracle after miracle today. And he calls us to do that with the people we love and our friends in our lives. And therefore, can we pray? If you're able, would you stand with me? We're going to pray together.